Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Module 2. I'm starting to get to know some of you via your posts. Pay attention to the announcement that I posted regarding your posts and about some communication. I don't want to get into it here because I want to keep this video as tight as I possibly can. So we're going to get started and talk about research because after all, that's what this course is about. Doing research is probably very new to most of you, so you can expect that you're going to have questions, and a lot of this might feel really unfamiliar. A lot of this might feel really challenging to you at times, but don't worry, we have all been there. We didn't all, those of us who do research didn't know how to do research from the go. We all started somewhere, and we started in courses just like this. If you are struggling, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and earlier is better than later, and that's all in the information that I gave you in the announcement. For this week, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about some of the research that I do, just to give you an idea of what a research project might look like. I'm going to talk about my dissertation. My dissertation really kind of set the field for a lot of the work that I do currently. My dissertation was an autoethnographic study. I'm going to talk about autoethnography later on in the course, so I'm not going to get deeply into it here. I might give you a little tidbit on what autoethnography is, but not a whole lot. I was really interested in new ways of working with family that took into account multi-generational transmissions of what I call feminine power. And that came from my own life experience. I noticed that my mom, my sisters, and I all communicated with each other, not necessarily with words. It was like a look in our eyes, a turn of the head, a turn of phrase, waving of the hand, whatever that might be. We communicated in a different way that the men in my family did, and I wanted to find out what that was all about. So I used a discourse analysis in the autoethnography that deconstructed gender, class, and race. I also went on to explore my own Irish heritage, which became really central to my ability to work with people in a therapeutic setting. If I hadn't done that, I would have done my work very, very differently. So it really gave me the foundation for my therapeutic work. I also explored my own biases, which I didn't understand that I had until I took on this project. I understood that I was a feminist through this project. I used a feminist analysis as I went through this project, in addition to explore some of the research that had been done on Irish families, on women, and so on and so forth. All of these things helped to form my own identity as both a therapist and a researcher. And these things are really kind of the underpinnings for what it is that I do right up until today. Now, I told you I'd tell you a little bit about autoethnography. Autoethnography is a form of qualitative research in which an author uses self-reflection and writing to explore anecdotal and personal experiences and connect their autobiographical story to a wider cultural, political, and social meanings and understandings. It is a useful qualitative method that you use to kind of explore your own life or your own lives, that can be then connected to from the personal to the cultural. And I certainly have had that experience in my own work. Now, again, qualitative research looks for the qualities of a topic, whereas quantitative looks for the numbers, charts, graphs, percentages, those sorts of things. So my own research is, of course, very important to me, but research as a whole actually does have a lot of impact, and I use research every day, as do you. We're going to talk about that. Research really does matter. You're going to be watching a video that talks about research as being cool, and in this video, Dr. Bassat gives you 6 reasons as to why it might be cool. I just want to highlight a few of them that really stuck out for me, and I'm going to do that here. One of them is that research, as I mentioned before, really has an impact on people's lives. For example, when we do research in social services, we can find out how a society might perceive young people, or how young people might perceive themselves within that society. Or we might look at if foster parenting is valued in our society or not, what people think about foster care. All of these things are research questions that have an impact directly on people's lives. Certainly in this moment of this pandemic, The notion of research around losing social contact with people or losing our jobs or having various forms of loss in terms of people dying all around us is rife with research questions and research problems. The research opportunities are all around us in terms of understanding how the virus is passed, how contagious it is, how we deal with it, or how we don't. Research can also help us to think outside the box. It can give us new ideas, give us new concepts, new practices. It can help us to develop new tools for social justice, and it can help us to better understand how we deal with situations and how we might come up with better policies, how we might come up with better procedures, and how we can really wrestle with social problems. So one of the things that we might be asking right now is this pandemic uniting us, or is it becoming a divisive topic? Are people in the U.S. seeing ourselves as joining in a global fight against this virus, or do we see this as some sort of conspiracy? Who's wearing a mask in public and who isn't? And what are those things that motivate those people to wear them or to not wear them? Is there a way to reconcile these differences? Are we more aware of our hand washing and social distancing as we come out and start returning to so-called normal? Or are we throwing caution to the wind and just going out there and pretending nothing has changed? So all of this offers the possibility that research might actually be kind of cool. When you begin to do your own research, I'm hoping that you find some excitement in it, because as I do my own research, I certainly do. So we're also going to start taking our first look at our texts that are provided for you online. As you know, this course doesn't actually have a textbook, but we're going to be reading fairly extensively from Dr. Newman's book, which I have posted a link for on CourseDen. I find that he has some really interesting and useful things to say about research, and they're going to be useful to you. It's going to be good stuff to come back to as you're writing your own projects. But I will give you this word of caution that he seems to be a bit more interested in quantitative, the numbers in research, than he is in qualitative research. So his writing tends to be a bit more biased in the quantitative direction. He does, however, give us some good insights into why social service research is important. He tells us that social service research is everywhere. We have research, of course, in different types of diets, in the foods that we eat, how much exercise we get, how much water to drink. Research tells us what's good for us, what's bad for us. He tells us what people want from our politicians and what we don't want. Research tells us who is most affected by COVID right now, not just in terms of their health, which people are more vulnerable to contracting COVID. And a lot of this is now playing out in terms of socioeconomic status. It's playing out interestingly in terms of race and and religion is also a big factor in who is more likely to contract this virus than who is not. So research is literally everywhere. It's in every paper that you read, every magazine article. It's certainly all over social media. Now, what we see are the results of research, if not reading the research itself. When we read these social media posts, we look at things like, what is the best drug for depression? What are the symptoms of depression? Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? You can find this all over social media. So the big question that Dr. Newman poses in his book is, why don't we just use common sense? Why don't we just use our own particular personal experiences in order to know things? And then he goes on to say that we can't fully rely on common sense for a couple of reasons. One is that our personal experiences tend to be biased in certain kinds of ways. And the second is that if we rely solely on common sense, we may become susceptible to propaganda, or what is commonly known as fake news. And there's fake news on either side of the agenda. Certainly the pandemic that we've been experiencing has been saturated with all kinds of news that pose questions like, what is this virus? Is this virus real? Did it come from China? Was it manufactured in a lab? Is it a conspiracy for the Democrats to keep President Trump out of office? All of these questions are all over. All of these sorts of things are based on propaganda, whether or not they're true, but not all of it is supported by research. We're seeing a lot of information that there are various kinds of drugs that may or may not be curative, whether masks should or should not be worn. We were told not to wear them initially. Now we're being told to wear them. All of these things can constitute dubious sources of reference if we don't know where they came from. Of course, we can also have what is called selective observation, and this is something I want you to hang on to, selective observation. Selective observation is something where we pay attention to one thing and not the other. So, for example, if you're a liberal, you may read only from sources like Mother Jones and the Huffington Post, whereas if you're more conservative, maybe you're only reading from sources like The Blaze or The Drudge Report. You might only watch Colbert, or maybe you listen to only Rush Limbaugh. You begin to learn the language and the opinions of a select group, and then you tend to close off your thinking to anything that might contradict your thinking or your side of the argument. Well, research is meant to help us sort all those kinds of things out. It can offer us a good deal of information and give us a more balanced way if we let our own assumptions be challenged by the research. And the good news is that you're already researchers already. You just didn't know it. You research things every day. You research what restaurant is best. Which shampoo should I use for my hair type? Is organic food better than other food? All of this research is really all the things that you do every single day, and it proves to us that research is really not all that difficult. It only seems difficult as we begin to break it down and really examine it, and that's what we're doing in this course, and that's why it seems so overwhelming. But if we take it a piece at a time, it's not as overwhelming as we might think. So I'm going to stop here for today, and I just want you to remember that your topic is due to me next week, so that I can have a look at what you're thinking about exploring, so I can get back to you with some information as to how you can hone that topic down and make it a much more reasonable project. So, little baby steps. The first thing you need to do is think about what it is that you want to do your research project on. And until then, I'm going to say goodbye and good luck finding a topic.